Yeah. You go first.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Skye.
And this is Histories, Mysteries, and Conspiracies.
Today, Elizabeth is covering the unsolved mystery of the Dyatlov Pass incident.
And Skye will be talking about the conspiracy theories associated with it. Let's begin. Our story starts on February 2nd, 1959 in the northern Ural Mountains of Russia. Sorry if I pronounce things wrong. I'm American.
A lot of Russian names here.
The main gist of it is the deaths of a group of 9 skiers. And the original group was made up of 8 men and 2 women who were almost all students or graduates of the Ural Polytechnical Institute. They were taking one of the most difficult hiking trails to get to Otorten, which is a mountain about 6 miles north of where their bodies were later found. Late on February 1st of 1959, they started their hike and went about 2.5 miles that first night. When they reached their camp base, they had dinner and a few team members went outside. This was around 6 or 7 p.m. at night, so not super late. Before the group left, Igor Dyatlov, the group's leader, and hence where this story gets its name, had agreed that he would send a telegram to another group no later than February 12th, when they had reached safety. One of the hikers, Yuri Yudin, had to go back after the first few days because he was sick. When he had left, Dyatlov told Yuri that he thought the group was going to take longer than the 12th. And so, when the 12th came and went without a message, no one was overly worried. By February 20th, there was still no message, and family members of the hikers were starting to get nervous. A search crew was sent out. Eventually, the army and police even used planes and helicopters to start their search for the missing hikers. By February 26th, the first members of the group were found in a badly damaged tent. According to the DyatlovPass.com, Michal Sharavin, sorry about that pronunciation, the student who found the empty tent said, "The tent was half torn down and covered with snow. It was empty and all the group's belongings and shoes had been left behind. Investigators said the tent had been cut open from inside and that skiers had fled in socks or even barefoot."
One thing that still gets me about this is I have no idea how they know it was torn open from inside.
Yeah, that kind of freaks me out a little bit.
I think, our forensics nowadays is I could see just some nerd with, a giant magnifying glass or something looking at the tent fibers and seeing how they're bent in a certain direction and being like, yes, this was torn from the inside. But in 1959...
How did they know that?
How do they know that?
Honestly, that's a really good point. I don't think I thought about that. I just assumed it was how it fell, but, gravity would do that too. So I guess that is confusing.
Isn't that weird? And if there was wind, too, if they cut out a flap and the flap goes to the outside, it could have just been a strong breeze. It was the mountains.
That's a good point.
I don't know. That's just a weird thing about that story that bothers me. Anyway, continue.
So he continued on saying a chain of 8 or 9 sets of footprints left by several people who were wearing socks, a single shoe, or barefoot could be followed and led down towards the edge of nearby woods on the opposite side of the pass, 1.5 kilometers or around a mile northeast. But after 500 meters, they were covered with snow, so the footprints just stopped. The real kicker here is that there were marks on the bodies that were found in the tent that proved they had been flipped over after they had died.
Wait, did you see bodies that were found in the tent?
The 2 bodies that were found the first day.
I don't think there were some found in the tent, though. I don't think
they were found by the tent.
Okay. Yeah.
So those first 2, that the guy who I couldn't say his name, Michal Sharavin, the student who found the tent.
Okay.
Saw that these bodies had been flipped over post-mortem. And they knew this because of injuries that were found on, I'm just picturing it, on their chest, that were, happened before they died, and then they were flipped over. I guess this is a podcast.
We do have to note that Elizabeth did a flipping motion with her hands.
Just pretending to flip a body. Anyways, the next day, 3 other hikers were found between the trees and the tent. It looked like these 3 had died while trying to head back towards the tent, and the autopsies showed that they had all died from hypothermia. None of this group was dressed appropriately for the harsh weather that they were in, even though they were all super experienced hikers. And despite some minor injuries that they had, none of those were fatal injuries. So after these original 5 were found, they were still looking for 4 more of the hikers. And finally, they were found on May 5th under 13 feet of snow. 3 of them had horrible injuries, including major skull damage and chest fractures. The doctor that performed the autopsies compared their injuries to a really bad car crash, even though they were in a place where no cars could have gotten to, considering there were 13 feet of snow. And if anyone knows about driving in the winter, there's no way a car's getting through there.
Yeah, and they were like on a mountain.
Exactly.
Yeah. In Siberia.
That's not happening. So even though they had all of these horrible fractures, they didn't have any outward injuries on the outsides of their bodies, except one of them who was missing her tongue. Just kind of incredibly gross. Personally, I think that the weirdest part was that some of the
someone
clothing...
missing their eyes, too?
What I read didn't say that, but strong possibility considering someone was missing a tongue.
Wrong. I have in my notes that someone was missing an eyeball. At least one eyeball was missing amongst the group.
Yeah, that's gross. But probably like the weirdest part was that some of the clothing that they found on this last group was radioactive.
That's why it's so insane to me.
Even though they're on a mountain in the middle of nowhere and it took days to get to this certain spot. So given all of these super weird circumstances, there's still no real answer as to how any of these people died, what caused these injuries, or why their tent was torn open from the inside and they decided to try and get out to it. So, without further ado, Skye, hit me with those theories, girl. Okay. Because I wrote that in the notes.
So, I'm going to this isn't like exact numbered order, but I'm going to start with the ones that are less logical / have a lot of holes in it, and then go toward the ones where there's better arguments, science, whatever. So one of them is avalanche, and a lot of people are like, well, obviously it's an avalanche, but these were super experienced hikers. So they were trying to get like this super high level of certification of hikers. So they're going to be smart enough to know, even if there's an avalanche there, you're more likely to die of hypothermia than the avalanche. You're not going to just leave without clothes. And if they got injured by the avalanche, and that's what those injuries were due to, they wouldn't have been able to get out and where the bodies were found anyway. So that's the first one. Okay. Well, first of all, have you seen the pictures from the cameras? They found 2 cameras and 1 camera was missing, but they found 2 cameras.
I've seen the ones that I'm looking at right now, the before they left.
Which are like eerie. Like
it's
something about
how do they know?
Is so crazy. I think the website is down.
Yeah. That's kind of what I'm guessing.
I need to find this picture because it's
one of these guys looks like someone I went to high school with.
Okay, here's the picture. So the next theory is about the Yeti, and this, I like a good Yeti story. In this case, it's not great. So this is literally almost all they have is this picture from the Thibaut Brunel, I have no idea if I'm saying that right, camera. But you see how it's like the super cliche Yeti pose. And
someone standing with their legs really wide and their arms
are
wide.
like an Egyptian.
If you were trying to imitate a Yeti,
I feel like
this is what you would
picture
look like.
Is that, yeah. And so, but that picture, no one even knows if that picture is real because the Discovery Channel did a weird documentary on the Yeti, and they talk about this case and they show that picture. So some people are like, maybe it's one of those fake documentaries that Discovery Channel makes, like the one they made about mermaids, and they just made this picture up. Have you seen that? The one about mermaids? Oh, you should watch it. It's really good.
Maybe I'll do my next story
it's kind
on
of creepy.
That.
Anyway. So there's that, and then also they're like, well, this could explain the missing tongue, and that's literally it. Like, that is the rest of the reason, because the footprints leading away from the tent aren't the footprints of people who are running. They're very calm footprints. Like, they took their sweet old time in their undies.
Especially in snow, you can tell.
Yes, and it was February. In Siberia, Russia. It was very cold.
I'm used to the cold, and I would be running if I was in my underwear outside.
Oh, me too.
In the winter.
In a Michigan winter, which I feel like isn't even as bad as Siberia. Anywho, our next theory is good old aliens. So...
Another good one.
There's several factors here which support this argument. So some of them are that some people saw lights in the sky near this mountain. However, the Soviet armed forces did launch several rockets from a nearby base, which is the Baikonur base. I don't know if I'm saying that right. And yeah, but the military is like, no, the rockets were much further north than that. They were about 70 kilometers north. But some people saw glowing and pulsating orbs flying in the direction of the mountain on the day of the tragedy. So there's that. Also,
that one the most so far.
The man who was in charge of the investigation, Lev Ivanov, he had an interview in the 90s with a journalist, and he mentioned how that, like, the pines at the top near where their bodies were found and everything, the trees were burnt at the top. Also,
that's weird.
He claims that a member of the Soviet Congress, along with his advisor, forced Ivanov to take out any references to the unknown flying objects or any other strange phenomena at the time. And this includes pictures of flying spheres drawn by the Mansai, which the Mansai are like the natives in that area, the Mansai hunters, and other testimonies. I wrote, also, the injuries were just crazy, because I feel like because no one knows anything about aliens, if they're like, oh, these injuries are crazy, like, it was probably just the aliens, because
how else do you explain them?
And the radioactivity and all that stuff. So which one is next? Okay, this one is, I don't understand this one at all, so I'm gonna have to do a lot of reading because this is very sciencey. Gravity fluctuation. So
here we go.
A few of these theories are like, this mountain was so weird shaped, so I'm assuming this is just a weird shaped mountain in a weird geological feature. And it's one of those things where people talk about, like, the Bermuda Triangle. Like, it's that of the mountains in Russia. Anyway, so this one guy, which I don't think I have his name except for it's Urchenko. That's what I know. And he's a PhD physicist, professor at the Institute of Engineering. So he seems pretty good. Now,
legit.
He believes that the significantly decreased external pressure through the hikers from the tent. The scientists have long studied thermodynamics, hydrodynamics, and various aspects of the nature of gravity, close enough, and the weightlessness of bodies. So he believes that, like, what happened was it decreased gravity. And he says, I quote, it formed a corridor of a kind in which Earth's gravity decreased. The tourists in the tent, sleeping or just getting ready, had time to undress, and then the unknown force began to lift them off of the floor and drag them in the direction of the corridor.
What the
So basically, and then as the outside pressure was significantly lower than inside the tent, the people began to push outwards. And that's why they had to cut the tent, because it was pushing them against the tent. The pressure from all of that created the internal injuries.
So I feel like if that, like, yes, science, go science. But if that were to happen, wouldn't that happen, like, more than just this one time?
I feel like, or, like, more than this one area. I don't know how these corridors
work. Yes, it would probably be super rare. But
yeah, that one's weird. That one just, like, I can't even wrap my head around it, so it's hard
but
for me.
But it deserves to be mentioned.
It does, because there's science. Another one is the stove, which basically, like, the stove was that they had in their tent, and it was, like, a big tent.
Yeah.
It was, like, a huge tent. It's not just, like, one of our pop-up little Coleman tents. It's, like, a big thing. And Dyatlov himself actually made this, like, homemade stove. So it could have been a little janky. We don't know. And the theory is that, like, it either had a fire or was super smoky, and it caused them to leave and maybe possibly exploded. But I don't like this one because you would have saw something in the tent.
Yeah, you would be able to tell if it was burnt.
Right, and the people, like, left calmly from the tent. So if it was an explosion, I feel like I'd be running if something was on fire.
Yeah, same.
And then maybe try to return soon. And it also just doesn't explain all the injuries and stuff like that. So that theory is not that solid. Okay, now we're getting closer to the good ones. So one of them is that they're mistaken for escaped prisoners from a local gulag camp, which, do you know about gulag camps?
Yes.
Okay. So for our listeners who don't know, because I had to look it up because I didn't know what they were, it's a forced labor camp for prisoners. And there was one nearby during this time. And so they didn't know if there were some theories, like, around this idea. One of them was that maybe the camper or the hikers saw the camp, and then the people running the camp killed them because they're like, we don't want any witnesses.
Could be it.
And that some of the political prisoners came from the fronts of World War II, and it could be, like, really important people in the prison, stuff like that.
That one seems legit, but, like, the injuries aren't.
Yeah, that's why it's weird. However, so Yuri Yudin, he's the one who left the group early.
Yeah.
When he came back to the site, when they were discovering everything, and he helped them identify some clothing and items, and he found, like, 3 items, I believe, that did not belong to the group, and one of them was this piece of clothing that was wrapped around the feet or legs to keep them warm, and it was a military piece of clothing.
And it
didn't belong to anybody in the
military
group.
Clothing there.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, they don't. Okay, I literally wrote, nobody knows how it got there, and nobody knows how, and it disappeared from the evidence room. It disappeared from the evidence too.
All right, Russia, what you hiding?
What you doing? So this one is kind of similar, where it's like maybe there's some government stuff involved, and it was that some of the members of the group were KGB agents. I love this theory so much. This theory is actually proposed by Alexei Rakitin, I believe I'm saying that right, who is the author of the book Dyatlov Pass. And so this person says that Alexander Zolotaryov, Alexander Kolovatov, and Yuri Krivonishenko were KGB agents on a mission to uncover a cell of CIA agents. They were to deliver radioactive samples, that's for those
radioactive clothing,
and then take photographs of the Americans, which is why a camera was missing. But something went wrong, and the CIA agents killed the group. According to this theory, 2 or more members of the Dyatlov group were hired by the KGB to deliver fake proof of radioactive tainted clothes, and the rest of the group was probably unaware. And yeah, so this is kind of explains, like, part of the stuff, like, they killed those people, and that could be why, like, some of the people were killed in weird ways. And there was a weird gray foam on Doroshenko's face.
So that kind of makes sense because, I mean, it's KGB and CIA involvement. We probably wouldn't understand how they'd be able to kill someone, right? Like, you've got to think that they've had some weird ways to end a life.
I think it's not this theory, but let me see. There's another theory I have in here that I haven't gotten to yet, which talks about how, you know what, I'm just going to get to it when I get there.
All right.
So that's that one. Next is the Mansai natives. So the Mansai natives knew the area. Like, if you look at the camera rolls, there's pictures of their, like, carvings and drawings on trees and stuff. And they had the skills to hide their tracks and hunt the hikers in the woods. However, like, the way that everyone is killed, they say could be used by someone who's familiar with hunting and killing animals. And they were thinking, like, maybe the group, because the group went to an area which not a lot of people go to, and the Mansai could have been like, hey, don't come here. And they were like, well, we're going to do it anyway. And then killed them because of that. Or they could have just, like, gotten an argument because of it. But during this time in 1959, it was a very Soviet atheist Russia. So it could have been like, religion is bad, and this is what religion does to people, because the Mansai people are very religious, and they were like, this is a sacred mountain, even though it's called Death Mountain or Mountain of the Dead or whatever. That's, like, literally what it translates to. That. So there's that one. Similarly, there are shrooms.
Yes.
So in this book, Don't Go There, by Svetlana Oss, she believes that Conti hunters had taken a garrick fly, which is a type of mushroom, and this group would take these mushrooms to get them in a killing mood.
Oh my god.
So I don't know, like, what type of mood it gets you in, but that picture of the Yeti, the quote-unquote Yeti, they also were like, maybe this is them taking a picture of these hunters.
And that's
before
why
they
he's
were
walking
killed.
so weirdly.
Mm-hmm. It was stalking its prey.
That's
so
strange.
And this is because, like, they pitched their tent on the side of this mountain. It wasn't by any trees, which they were like, that's not good.
No, when you're camping, you don't do that.
And so there's a couple of theories behind this. This is one of them, was that, like, well, they saw this creepy guy in the woods, so they're like, well, let's pitch our tent that way instead. Also, one of them is that the Dyatlov was just trying to become, like, this crazy, good, impressive hiker with all of this, like, list of amazing things he's done, and one of them included hiking just on the front face of a mountain. So, or camping on the face of a mountain. So that could have been that as well. Okay, yeah, so part of this shrooms idea is that the Zolotaryov and Thibault, they may have gone outside to relieve themselves, and Zolotaryov took his camera because something interesting was going on, or the group just ate the mushrooms themselves and went crazy.
That kind of makes sense, too.
But it doesn't explain the injuries. No. All of the injuries, anyway.
But, like, that would explain the lack of clothing outside,
that's
probably.
what I was saying. And, like, calmly walking outside.
And, yeah, being calm, thinking, I mean, you don't know what being on shrooms is like.
But those shrooms, are really interesting because they're red and white, and those shrooms are part of the inspiration of the Christmas theme. No, Christmas theme.
I was just picturing the mushrooms
those
in, like, Super Mario Brothers.
Yes, those ones.
Mario Kart.
But those mushrooms, like, are super poisonous. But reindeers live there, and reindeers' kidneys can process it with getting the poison out.
Oh, that's
but you can still get high. So people would, like, drink your reindeer pee, or they could dry out the mushrooms by putting them in a sock and hanging them over the fire. And the shaman, yes, and the shaman from this group, the whoever, Mansai or whatever, the shamans would wear red and white clothes because that was the color of the mushrooms, and they would make boots to help them in the cold out of reindeer hide, which when dried turns black.
That's where we get Santa from.
Exactly. Isn't that crazy?
That's super weird. I never knew that.
I was like, what? Okay. Anyway, I don't know where I'm at. Secret launches. That's what's next. So, kind of talked about it earlier. There was a base close by where they were shooting off missiles, and there's this theory that this is a theory brought by Kisilov Gennady Ivanovich, a journalist from Yekaterinburg. So he or she, I have no idea, this person says that they may have seen this secret missile launch and they weren't supposed to, and so they killed them. And then they did a stage workers created this scene that the rescuers found. So, and it was in order to avoid disclosure of the secret facilities and to hide the crimes, the military and the KGB removed the dead bodies from the real place of their death and brought them to the ridge. So,
which could be why things were so spread out, like they're trying to.
And then, like, they also said, like, if this was real, they would have to edit the diaries as well. But I feel like you'd have to be really thorough to do that,
especially with, like, handwriting analysis and things like that.
And I feel like if who's going to be like, oh, they definitely have a diary or two, like,
yeah, we should probably go through their bags, and
it just seems very thorough. Anyway, this next one it's so. Like, it's such a rare incident, but I like this theory a lot. It has a lot of good science there. This is infrasound. So, Donnie Icar, who wrote the book Dead Mountain, he spent, like, 5 years researching the incident. He went to the Dyatlov Pass in the, like, winter, too, which was crazy.
Oh, there's no way I would do that.
Oh, yeah. So he thinks that this wind phenomenon called a Kármán vortex, K-A-R-M-A-N, Kármán vortex street, could have produced a terrifying, powerful sound, which is proven to induce irrational fear in humans. So this is going back to the weird mountain shape. It was, like, perfect to change the winds, which would have, like, changed them into tornadoes, which was, like, a bunch of mini tornadoes, which would have spun so fast that it could tear the roofs off buildings, and it would have created a super loud noise. And he says that, like, if you're hearing these crazy noises, you're gonna freak out and be like, what is going on?
Happening?
And leave the tent. It can also produce a more subtle and terrifying phenomenon known as infrasound, which you can't hear, but studies have shown that it has a marked effects on the human body, including loss of sleep, shortness of breath, and extreme dread. So Icar, backed by scientists at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration in the U.S., believes that the combination of the effects on infrasound, the deafening noise of the tornadoes, and the claustrophobic pitch-black tent could unseat even the most steady-minded adventurer.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. Especially, like, I know common day, there's been a lot of things going on with, like, I think it was China and Cuba at the different U.S. embassies there with different U.S. officials, like, waking up with sudden hearing loss from, like, sonic incidences that they haven't publicly explained yet. But it makes sense that it would be something with sound. And that also, I mean, sound in something super loud would explain the pressure, too, with the wind and the tornado things.
And that could explain some of those injuries if they got hit by the tornado, and why the bodies were all, like, all over the place.
And why it would look like injuries equivalent to a car accident.
Yes.
This is the most legit one.
Well, wait, this is my favorite theory. This is the last one I have, and this one is what I think happened.
Ooh.
And this is actually written by, so this website that I got this from is dyatlovpass.com. And this theory, I'm pretty sure, is written by one of the creators of the website. This is kind of long. There's going to be a lot of quoting because there's a lot of sciencey things that I don't understand and I can't short
leave that to the experts.
Exactly. So Nigel Evans, he's responsible for this theory. So he says that the tent slits, the hot spot near the tent, and a camera on a makeshift tripod suggest that they were observing something in the sky. Given that the local Manside people blamed the golden orbs for the tragedy, so that comes back to like the rockets and the UFOs and all that, and the repeated sightings of lights in the sky from reliable witnesses in the same period, together with photos from the group's camera, possibly of aerial lights, it is plausible that the group fled from the tent due to an occurrence of ball lightning. Now,
okay.
Do you know about ball lightning?
I've heard of it before, just because I'm really interested in like weather stuff.
I've become very interested in weather this summer as I've been outside every single day for work.
That would do it.
But yes. So anyway, he said the ball lightning got close to the tent and hovered there, which would melt the snow and create the hot spot. And then the group hurried to the tree line, 1,500 meters away, because they were like, oh crap, this is lightning.
Get to cover.
Yeah. And then they lit a fire while they waited for the object to disappear. So this explains a bit. So it explains why 2 deaths at the Cedar were due to a single electrocution event. Due to normal lightning strike or ball lightning creating burnt hair, bleeding head orifices, large burns, burnt clothing, pulmonary edema, and tree damage. And the subsequent 4 deaths in the ravine due to an explosion near the den. So there's like a whole bunch of science behind that. I'm not going to get into it, but it's just cold weather, ice, lightning creates...
That explains like the burns at the tops of the trees too.
Yeah. But anyway, it creates temperatures several times hotter than the surface of the sun, like 30,000 degrees Celsius. Yeah. So it created an explosion amplified by the confines of the ravine, and that threw the den and its occupants 6 to 10 meters, resulting in blunt force injuries similar to a car accident. This theory suggests that 3 surviving members died in 2 groups. Rustem Slobodin was injured and urgently had to be returned to the tent, assisted by Zenaida Kolmogorova. Due to snow drifts and high winds, he collapsed on the journey. And then Kolmogorova also further on due to the same, plus exhaustion from the effort of assisting him. So those are the people trying to get back to the tent.
That's why they were found facing the tent.
And then Dyatlov remained in the ravine with the ravine 4. And then even though Dubinia and Zolotaryov were badly injured, they stayed alive for some time afterwards. And Thibaut Brunel was unconscious. Dyatlov must have stripped the 2 bodies at the Cedar, turning their bodies over to provide more insulation for those still alive. So they took their clothes, and that's why they say, they were found with some of their clothes, so that's why they're like, oh, that's why they're missing, like, basically naked, because they took their clothes to provide more information for those still, or insulation, not information, I guess, kind of, for those still alive, and returned to the tent, but died, being the only member of the group to have clear signs of hypothermia. Police officer Lev Ivanov, which we discussed earlier with the UFO thing, who led the official inquest in 1959, apparently favored this theory.
Yeah, that one seems the most logical.
And it explains everything.
So you've got the science in there explaining the stuff around the trees.
Mm-hmm. And the injuries. And one thing...
And why they're all spread out like that. Yeah, okay.
And one thing it doesn't account for, the missing tongue and eyeballs. But that one, it could be due to animal decomposition. And the thing with that is, I watched this video, and I can't remember who made the video. I should have wrote it down. It was on YouTube. It's like the first thing that pops up when you look at Dyatlov incident. But it says that the official quote from the report says, diaphragm of the mouth and tongue are missing. Which, what does that even mean? Like,
diaphragm, I just think of choir in high school. Like, breathing.
Diaphragm of the mouth and tongue are missing. Like, that doesn't even make any sense. So it's like, it could be like the whole mouth, the tongue. So it could have been eaten. Animal. Yeah. I don't know. So it's like that one is the one thing that you could be like, oh, yeah, probably was that. And then one theory that wasn't mentioned, and I'm not surprised it wasn't, but because of Russia, but at this time anyway, but I'm also not surprised that no one else has thrown it around, is ghost. Hello.
Yes.
You threw around aliens, you have to throw around ghost. So, I mean, I'm obviously biased and trying to get you to believe in the ball lightning theory, but what theory do you think it was? Or which ones do you think hold?
Well, definitely the ball lightning one, because that just makes the most sense, but also the sound one, the sonic Boom. That
The
one.
infrasound.
Yes, infrasound.
Infrasound, yeah.
I like sonic boom better. I'm going to start calling it that.
A little different, but same
yes.
thing.
But that one makes a lot of sense too, just given the circumstances with the injuries and the science behind it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Although I still do like the Yeti one, just because the Yeti.
I like the KGB agents one.
That one just sounds like it'd make a really good movie
cool.
plot.
Yeah. There was one I actually had to take out of here.
Project.
There's one, like all these years are from the Dyatlov Pass Incident website, but one of them from the website didn't make it on here, and it was like, basically that was like a teleportation portal because it was in a movie that they made recently, which, have you seen, what's it called, Cloverfield? Not Cloverfield, not that at all. What's the other place? Chernobyl Diaries, that's what it is. Have you seen that with Jesse McCartney?
Jesse McCartney's in a movie about Chernobyl?
Yeah.
What?
Anyway, that movie had this, I watched the trailer for whatever movie, I think it's just Dead Mountain or something like that, but has a very similar feel to Chernobyl Diaries, like very not realistic at all and just kind of getting there to freak you out. Are you writing that down?
Yeah, I gotta watch it, you know, my boy Jesse McCartney's in it.
Kyler loves Jesse McCartney, so we saw it, and then yeah, I'm not gonna say anymore because it's gonna spoil the movie for you and I don't want to say it. But it was definitely like an eerie.
I know what I'm doing tonight.
Just watching
Jesse McCartney and Chernobyl Diaries.
It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. Yeah. So that was this. I don't think there's anything else that I want to say about this story.
I feel like there's a lot of different ways that you could go with all of the different theories.
There's so much.
So many more. And there's
so much more information.
Too.
There's so much more information that we didn't even cover. Like, part of it was that some of them, I want to say it was Alexander Zolotaryov, Alexander Kolevatov, and Yuri Krivonishenko used to work with radiation. So, like, part of it is like,
maybe your clothes still had radiation on them.
Yeah.
Like, half-life is probably not
exactly. So that's why they're like, it could just be because of that, because they used to work. I don't remember what they did. It's on a website.
That's not as fun.
But they did. I know. That's what I was thinking too. I'm like, we're just going to ignore that for now. What is this website? Oh, this website. I just have my Google images open trying to find that Yeti picture. And there's a picture of like a bunch of spots on a body. And I think it's the radiation.
Ooh.
About Krivonishenko. Maybe it's injuries. Whatever. There's just like circles.
I'm scared to Google image search this. Yeah, don't Google image search it if you're like eating or something.
What? Searching what?
Just Dyatlov Pass.
Yeah, we'll post some of the pictures of like the Yeti picture and then maybe a picture of the group or something on our Instagram.
The less freaky ones. Yeah.
Oh, the tent. We should also put a tent picture in there. That'd be good.
We can definitely do that.
Yeah. What's our Instagram? Is it
HMCT podcast? I believe.
We both said that with the same amount of surety. Like,
you know, the one in charge of social media.
HMCT podcast. It is that.
Yes.
So go look at those pictures.
Our email is hmctpodcast@gmail.com too, if anyone wants to add anything or correct our pronunciations
or
of
add
Russian.
anything. Russian is a tough language, man. Whew. Tell your friends and family. Keep looking up weird stuff and crazy theories and be your weird self.
Yes.
Okay. Be your weird self. The end. Goodbye.
First one recorded.